Hey everybody, this is Doc Mack from the Galloping Ghost Arcade out in Brookfield, Illinois. Today we are back with another gamer profile, and this time with none other than Jason Krogh.
Hey everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
And your experience here at the arcade is definitely different than most of the players that we profile and showcase. And none less deserving, but just different. Like you're so entrenched in the community that's been around the Galloping Ghost Arcades for the longest time. So I guess let's just jump in. Can you tell us a little bit about your first time here at the arcade?
Yeah, so a little background here. My dad in December of 2010 found out about the arcade here. And I wanted my first experience to be with him coming here, but he worked on Saturday part-time, and I was busy with stuff on Saturday. So we were looking for that perfect time where we could go together. And that actually happened to be in July of 2011, where we came here, and we got here about 15 minutes before it opened. We parked out in the parking lot. We came in, and both of us were just wowed at the scene that we saw here. Yeah. Because it was nothing like I had seen growing up.
Had you played at many arcades growing up?
Yeah, I played in one arcade. My dad would take me to Friar Tuck's, which is located in Calumet City, Illinois. And we would go to the mall there, and then we would go to the arcade. And I remember my dad getting a couple $5 in the machine, and then we would go and play the games. And I just remember being fascinated by all the games and the sounds, and playing some of the basic games like Double Dragon, Altered Beast, Golden Axe, and other games like that.
Yeah. When you came here, tell us about that first night that you played. Yes. You came at open.
Yeah. So the first time I came, we walked in. I think we were the first ones here, and the third person here. And this is actually kind of a funny story. So we came in, and my dad and I instantly hit the classics over there, and played some games. And it was interesting because some of the games I played, like Asteroids and Space Invaders, I only thought that those were available on the home systems. So when I came here, I was shocked to find some of the games that I thought only existed on the Atari that were actually arcade games. But there was someone playing in the corner over there, and I can't remember the name of the game, but my dad and I were here for about 4 hours. And that person was on that game for the entire 4 hours that we were here. And I found out later on that was James White, whom I had met, I think, the second time I actually came to the arcade. And he was trying to get a high score, but he had spent the entire 4 hours on that one game.
Yeah.
And so that was my first experience here. And then the second time I came, I brought a bunch of friends. That was in July. I brought about 8 people here, and we got here around noon, and we stayed till about 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's been really interesting to watch so many, people come with their friends and stuff, but often friendships form here at the arcade. And like you say, now that you knew that was James White now, you've obviously made so many friends and been to so many events. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the community here?
Yeah, so when I first came here, actually a little thing about me in the past, when I went to the arcades when I was younger, I always wanted to be part of the community of the arcade. And I was more just a person to kind of play some games and kind of walk around and do things like that. So when I came here, I definitely wanted to play old games that I had played, but there were so many new games that I had never played before, and there's even more new games now, which is great. But I wanted to be more part of the social community, get involved with people, and that's really probably the biggest part of my experience here, is really just kind of bringing people together, inviting a lot of different people to the arcade. I have some of my best friends are actually here at the arcade, Doc, Chris, and then Pete. I'm glad that Chris made it out today. So it's really the friendships here that have really amazed me at the arcade. I moved away to Houston. I've been gone for 2 years, and this is one of the first places I want to come to when I come back. And this is actually my second time this week that I've come back here. So it's definitely a spot I'd like to hit.
Yeah. Well, and again, the friendships that have formed here a lot of the people that are here, especially when you were around, you would show up every Saturday, and there was so many nights that it was like you were here till closed, well beyond closed. Everybody would be here still, and I remember everybody leaving at like 6 in the morning. It was like we'd still be working on machines and playing stuff, and it was it's been definitely an evolution of how the community is, but that was definitely a time period that was so memorable, and it's such an interesting time for the arcade, and again, so amazing that you were able to be part of it. And again, while a lot of the players here, they're here chasing scores and stuff, you've always been just such a solid, strong supporter of the arcade, and we really appreciate everything that you've done. And we've even the Walter Day trading cards and TG, you were recognized for those what you've done with the community, and it's very, very deserving that you got that, just because it was with arcades. It's something that people, I don't think, used to expect. And you were always out there just promoting the arcade and telling people, oh, you got to come in. And it was like, it was so cool to see how inviting you were to everybody else and so accommodating. And you were just such a beacon of like what made this arcade cool. And we appreciate that. And again, there's so many events that you've been to. And can you tell us a little bit about some of the events that you found that were just like, wow, this is awesome?
Yeah, sure. I think I came to the second Shang Tsung Fight Night. I think that was in 2011. I attended all of them after that. Unfortunately, I missed the one this year. But it amazed me that the number of people that would come to the tournament, and each year there was more people. And I remember there were people from Michigan and Ohio and other states that would come down just for that particular event. That event also, I enjoyed the way that event had evolved, whereas there were a few Mortal Kombat people here, and then it got larger and larger to, I think this year you guys had 12 people at Combat Con. 18 people at Combat Con. And then I remember the Halloween parties that you guys used to have, the General Chaos party.
With Brian Colin.
With Brian Colin, and that was cool when you guys had all the consoles set up in there and people were playing. And then just any other events that were here, I tried to make sure I could be here.
Yeah, and even now, it's so amazing that, again, you've moved away, but you still, like, this is still a home to you.
It is definitely a home. I have some stuff from the arcade hanging on my wall at the house. This is always one of the first places I want to come back when I come and visit Chicago or home. And my boys love to come here as well, so it's becoming a family tradition.
Yeah. And
even my dad comes here, and my wife have been here a few times, so it's definitely something we look forward to. And anytime I come back to Chicago, I'm definitely going to make a trip or two here, and hopefully all the people I know can definitely come out.
What are some of the games that you like really enjoy playing when you're here?
Yeah, well, one of my favorite games, and I think Chris also shares this with as me as well, is Solar Assault. I like a lot of the older games, Altered Beast and Splatterhouse, a lot of the Japanese shooters that you guys have, a lot of games that never existed in arcades in the 80s that you get from Japan and all other different places. Is really fascinating. So every time I come back to the arcade, I always used to keep a list of games that I hadn't played, and when I was here, and I would come in here and play those new games. And even now being away, I try to play those games when I come back that I haven't played before. And the interesting thing is the arcade is the same today as it was even before I moved away.
Yeah.
And it's bigger, it's better. You guys actually have more events now than you ever had when I lived here, which is a great thing to get people to come out here.
Has there, like, I know you're out in Texas now. Have you found any arcades out there that you you like or go to? Or?
There is one arcade in the Houston area. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but I haven't made it out there yet. I was gifted an X arcade cabinet for my 40th birthday, which I spend most of the time actually following the games that they release here on Monday, and then I go on my X arcade cabinet and download the game and play that at my house. I really don't think there's an arcade. I was telling Doc earlier this week, I really don't think there's an arcade that is anywhere similar to this. So as far as games, I have all our old console games hooked up at home, and then the X arcade cabinet, which I play. I do have a couple of demons for home systems that I'm still trying to defeat now. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. To this day, it bothers me that I can't beat Mike Tyson. And then the other one is the original Double Dragon on the NES. I got past the machine gun guy, but then I couldn't beat my twin brother.
Your shadow.
And I think if I die from this earth, I think that'll haunt me for the rest of my life. So hopefully one day I can beat that.
Do you play any of the other current consoles or anything, or are you mostly
traditional older games?
Yeah.
I'm sure as my boys get older and want to get in the Xbox or PS4 or whatever, I'm sure I'll definitely get into those games.
How has having kids, like, what do you let them play? Like, what are you letting them play everything? Like, what are some of the games that they enjoy?
Yeah, so the boys enjoy all the old games. They enjoy some of the Atari 2600 games like Space Invaders. The boys love Street Fighter 2. I haven't let the boys play Mortal Kombat yet because my wife would probably kill me if they tried ripping each other's heads off. But they like to play Splatterhouse, Golden Axe, just a lot of obscure games that I've downloaded.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So I really enjoy that they've developed a passion for playing games. I think that's something that we as a society need to do, is to make sure younger people have an appreciation not only for the newer games but also the older games.
Absolutely.
Where everything started.
Absolutely. That's there's so many of these games. Again, I say it often that they've stood the test of time. People travel from all around the world to come play these arcade games, and something that often, like the new console games, they kind of come and go.
Right.
And they're just little blips in time where it's something very special about arcade games, and it's great that the appreciation that people have for them, and it's awesome that you're bestowing that on your kids, that that'll perpetuate that into the future.
Definitely. And one thing about people with families and young kids, that definitely bring them to the arcade here, because one thing is my boys are 8, 7, and 6, and they enjoy the simple games that are on the Atari.
Yeah.
And the simple games, and they're not asking for the more modern games. They love all the games that are in the 90s, all the games that are in the arcade here. So it is definitely a place for families to come and people to really understand where everything started.
Yeah.
Well,
and again, we had mentioned that you have been to so many of our events and played so many games, and I know you're always watching the streams and stuff. Has there been any particular memory that just is so stand out for you here at the arcade?
Yeah, there's one. I was a huge fan of the Street Fighter 2 game. And I remember in the 90s going to restaurants and in different places to play that game, playing against someone you didn't know.
Right.
And then in the 90s, then our arcades kind of disappeared. So I really enjoyed coming here and playing Street Fighter 2 and playing against people I didn't know. It kind of reminded me of the arcade scene in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I remember one night I was doing really well until some guy came in and beat me like 8 out of 8 games, and then I knew at that point it was time for me to call it quits. But at the end of the day, you don't remember losing a game; you just remember the fun that I had.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, is there anything else that you'd want people to know about your gaming history or about you? Yeah,
so I grew up on a little bit. I remember my dad. I was 6 years old when I started playing games. And I remember my dad took me into Toys R Us, and they had the clear glass cabinets there with the systems and the games in there.
Yeah.
And to this day, I actually found the Pitfall and River Raid box with the receipt on there from 1982. And River Raid and Pitfall, those are some of the games that I remember that really got me started on the arcade scene. And then, you know, with the advent of the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo and more advanced systems, and even the arcade scene in the 90s, it's really always been a part of my life. I've been a little different than the high score people. I'm kind of more of a casual gamer, but I would say that most people are probably casual gamers, and I would definitely tell people to find time to embrace coming to this arcade or playing games or even getting older systems and embracing the newer systems, because it's definitely something I think that should be a part of people's lives. It's a great hobby, and you'll meet great people, and it's definitely something that I want to stick around for a long time.
Yeah. Last question: If you had only one game on any console or arcade or anything, what would you be playing?
Probably, I like the game Turbo, the racing game here. That was one of my favorite games.
You were putting some time on that.
I did put some time on Turbo, and it actually benefited me because in Houston, the traffic is horrible. And driving on the road to work every day almost reminds me of Turbo. So that game has really helped me to deal with the traffic in Houston. But I always liked like pole position and those kind of games.
Yeah.
But Turbo was definitely one of my favorite games. And then Solar Assault was one of my favorite games.
Yeah. That was definitely, again, you and Chris putting high scores on that. When we got that was just awesome to see.
So.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up with that, and thank you so much for everything.
Thanks,
you
Todd.
are definitely a pillar of the community here, and always great having you in town. We look forward to next time. Hopefully you can be here for longer.
Yes.
But thank you so much for everything. Jason Krogh.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you. This is Doc Mack for the Galloping Ghost Arcade. We hope to see you around the arcade soon.